The majority of the greatest athletes to ever compete in their chosen sport were well aware of their skills and the value that they bring to their team. Not only that, but a lot of players knew that they were going to be the best of the best. I think about Michael Jordan or even the late Kobe Bryant, for example. And this isn't just applicable to basketball, it's not even solely applicable to sports. There seems to be a common theme here. A lot of people who are at the top of their field have some sort of an ego. Now, depending on who you ask, having an ego could be considered a bad thing by some and a good thing by others. And you don't even need to look further than the Merriam-Webster's website to see this. Just look at two examples they listed. Now, the first sentence obviously has some more positive connotation to it, whereas the second one makes ego seem like a bad thing. So what does Blue Lock, a show about finding Japan's next striker, have to teach us about ego? Now, before taking a look at Blue Lock, let's make sure we're clear on the definition. I'm going to focus more on the common definition shown here, where ego is a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. One thing that's fascinating about Blue Lock is that they don't explicitly mention whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. They just mention that it's needed to be the world's best striker. After all, what matters is being able to get the job done, and sometimes that means taking the shot that no one else wants to take. Now, to state the obvious, having a big ego is usually seen as a negative thing, and I'd probably agree with that as well. But I think that's because most of us know at least one person who has what you might call an overinflated ego, or in other words, an unreasonably big ego. But in my opinion, we don't really pay attention to people's egos as much when they have the results to show for it. Now, I'm not saying that we don't notice it, I'm just saying that on average, we don't seem to care as much about it. Watching someone do circles around the opposing team makes for an amazing top 5 plays of the week, but that's only if they succeed. Our first real world example of this is Connor McDavid in the NHL. Now, whether you have any knowledge of hockey or not, watch this clip and tell me if you can guess which one he is. Although he doesn't come off as someone with an overinflated ego in his interviews, think about what kind of person chooses to make a play like this. Now, could they pass? Sure. But instead, he does what nobody else would. And that's actually what separates him from everyone else. But what about when you don't have the results to back it up? So I think a good example of this is actually the current Conor McGregor. Although he's always had quite the ego, he at least had the results to show for it back in his peak. Because of that, he had a loyal fan base that really enjoyed all the antics that he brought to the UFC. But making comments like this after being in a bit of a slump really highlights his overinflated ego and explains why a lot of his fans have begun turning on him. Although Blue Lock says that having an ego is necessary to be a star striker, what are the pros and cons? Let's take a look at this picture I found, comparing the pros and cons of ego. While I agree with some and disagree with others, I want to focus on the last point made here, that acting egoistic on an individual basis may even benefit our society. That's actually one of the main points driven in Blue Lock. Being the best there is, the one who gets the job done, means that you put yourself in a leadership role, whether you intended to or not. There's no mistaking that people will look up to their peers when they're able to lead, take matters into their own hands, and get the job done. Of course, there's always a caveat though. Even Michael Jordan's own teammates will say that he was kind of a tool to be around, and that he wasn't really pleasant by any means. There's an obvious trade-off, and based on these points, you can actually see how the pros and cons listed here align themselves thematically. To show some real-world examples of this, let's take a look at some of the greats and some of their quotes that relate to this topic. Quick disclaimer here, I'm not trying to paint these people in a certain light. Most of them have great quotes about humility and teamwork as well. I just want to highlight their approach and how it aligns to Blue Lock. People just don't understand how obsessed I am with winning. Kobe Bryant. To be successful, you have to be selfish, or else you never achieve. And once you get to your highest level, then you have to be unselfish, stay reachable, stay in touch, don't isolate. Michael Jordan. I just have this thing inside me that wants to eat and conquer. Maybe it's egotistical, but I have it in me. I don't want to be a tycoon, I just want to conquer people and their souls. Mike Tyson. And finally, if you don't believe you're the best, then you will never achieve all that you are capable of. Cristiano Ronaldo. Now these are just some of the quotes that I chose to go with. Now funny enough, I'm pretty sure that there's some variation of the last two quotes in Blue Lock.
You can't possibly become the world's best striker unless you're also the world's biggest egoist.
Now all that being said, it's not hard to see the downfall of having an overinflated ego, but I think that's because it's been made known to most of us. Overall, I'd agree that being humble is an admirable trait, but I think that the benefits of being egotistical and being self-centered aren't usually acknowledged, and that's because these aren't considered as nice traits to have. As I mentioned earlier, Michael Jordan was an unpleasant person to play with, but can anyone say that he didn't push his teammates to be the best that they could be? both through his words and his actions? Of course, there's always trade-off, and his kind of feedback isn't for everyone, but you can't deny his ability to motivate and inspire his teammates. The fact of the matter is that actions speak louder than words, and if you're able to show how competent you are in a match, then your teammates are forced to alter the way they play, either by improving so they can keep up with you, or by changing their playstyle for the benefit of the team. So I wanted to see how others actually felt about this topic, and I noticed that GameRant also did an article on this subject. The link will be in the description for those that are interested. Now, although it did seem to have some sort of disagreement with Blue Lock on ego, the final line of the article best explains the importance of ego, and it's actually something that I also believe in. But unless he believes that he is the best player on the field, he will have no chance of being the best player on the field. To me, you have to have some sort of ego in order to be great at something. And no, that doesn't change if you try to make it sound nicer by using the word confident instead of ego. And this is best shown in my final example, with Portland's notorious buzzer beater against OKC. Would Dame have received the same amount of praise had he missed this shot? Well, obviously, of course not. But that's not the right question to ask here. A better question would be, what kind of a person decides to take a shot like this? A confident one? I don't know. To me, confidence isn't enough to explain a choice like that. And so I'll leave you with two questions. Do you think it's possible to be the best at something without an ego? And do you think it's possible to turn your ego on and off so that it doesn't carry over to other aspects of your life? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you could go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe for more videos like this. In the coming weeks, I'll be doing similar videos on God of War, Dragon Ball Z, and Batman to name a few, so you won't want to miss out on that. And with all that said, thanks for watching.